What's up? What's up?
Good morning, James.
Good morning, Michael. Happy everybody's here today. Once again, this is another Thursday where we interview an agent that's killing it within their industry to provide tremendous value for the real estate agent that's looking to grow their business and take their business to the next level. Here, I'm with my good buddy Michael Foster. Michael, man, tell everybody where you from, man.
So I've been in the Greensboro market. I've actually lived in Greensboro since '93, the longest I've ever lived anywhere. And we have a group of about 65 active agents in our group that we call the Prosperity Builders. So Karen, myself, and Scott Bosberg are a partnership, and we have that group of agents with us. So yeah, we've been doing this. We're 4 years in now with EXP, and it's been great for us.
Yep, yep. So man, all right. So tell us, like, I mean, I know there's a few different things that you've been able to accomplish. Just kind of tell everybody a little bit about like how did you get into real estate? So we can kind of get into the topic for today.
Sure, sure. So I was in the home furnishings business for 25 years. And over the course of the years, I ran companies like Pennsylvania House, Broyhill Furniture, Calvin Klein Home. And the last 5 years, I ran the Calvin Klein Home Furnishings and was traveling. My last year, I traveled 140 cities and was gone 40 weeks. And I called Karen like in 2016. I said, this is it. You need help and I need to get off the road. So I got my license I went for 8 straight weekends, got my license and resigned from the company. And I'm in eighth year and I'm loving it. I mean, Karen and I and Scott, we were at Remax, and Remax was great. We love Remax, but you never got to 100%. You were at 95% at the most you could do. And I just didn't want to give that 5% to those guys all year long. So anyway, we're happy.
Awesome, man. So, all right. So we're gonna kind of get into it today. We're talking about business planning for the new year, and
Yeah.
one of the things that I know both of us have in common is with John Kitchens, being able to coach us and talk help take our businesses to the next level in of itself. What are some of the things that you've been able to do when it comes to business planning and for helping your group?
Yeah, thanks. Well, first of all, props to John Kitchens. He gives us such terrific guardrails to help us talk about what we're going to talk about today and to implement it. I mean, John is so good at getting you to implement, and everybody can talk, but he knows how to get you to be accountable and take action. And that's really what I think you and I try to do with the agents that work with us, because they hear a lot of stuff. There's a lot of golden rings being thrown around, but what is really what you need to execute on? So what I picked up from John, if you want me to go through it, I can do it in the time we have. It's a 5-step process. And this is what I do with any agent. And I have about 7 or 8 in our group that ask me to sit with them and put business plans together every year. But the first thing that anybody should do is review your 2022. You can't figure out where you're going next year until you know what you did last year. And what I mean by that is, how many units did you sell? What was the dollar volume of your sales? How much of your business was buyers? How much was sellers? What was your average commission rate on those sales for the buyers and the sellers? I would wager, you can help me verify this, probably 95% of the agents in the industry have no idea to any of those questions. How can you decide what you're going to do going forward if you don't know where you've been? So that's the first thing that we do with our agents. Like, where did your sales come from? How much was sphere of influence? How much was past clients? How much was your paid leads like Zillow and Realtor.com, referrals, open house, GeoFarm? Those are all categories. Now, agents listening on this call may only be doing 3 or 4 of those things. Our good friend John Kitchen tells us, James, right, you got to have at least 5 or 6 solid lead generation sources, whether they're paid or unpaid, to make sure you're covered, because something's going south. You got to have other things to pick it up, right?
Yep, yep. I mean, I always call it like you got to have different pillars in your business. I always use the example of the book "Who Moved My Cheese," which is a book to read. When it kind of gets you in that mindset of always be looking for the next opportunity, always looking for the next thing, and not ever getting satisfied, especially when it comes to lead generation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And once you figure that out, then the next thing is, what's your return on investment on those lead sources? Something may be giving you a decent number of sales, but if you're not 2 or 3 times your investment, you really need to take a hard look at that. And so you just take your total dollar sales from that lead source and divide it by how much you spend on it. And if it's not 2 or 3 times, you might be wanting to look at something else to take the place of that, because it's great to say you made $75,000 on lead source XXX, but if you spent 70,000 to make that happen, what's so good about that?
Yeah, yeah. But to your point, man, I don't even think that a lot of people even realize, you know, just going to the basics, how much they're paying per lead. I mean, I talk to a lot of people when they're getting leads coming in. I say like, well, how much are your leads? Well, I pay X amount per month. Yeah, but how many leads you get for that? Well, somewhere around this right here. Well, I mean, you should measure that. That should be a number. Like you should know how much you're paying per month, how many leads you're getting for that, and you need to figure out like divide that in and see how much you're paying per lead. That makes a big difference when it comes to if I'm going to call that lead or not. When you know how much you actually
Right.
paying for that.
Absolutely. Another thing that I challenge our agents when we're going through this review is, what are you doing for training? What are the things you're doing in training right now? Are they working for you? Can you quantify any results? Is that training holding you accountable for what you commit to? And again, you and I can say that's what John Kitchens does for us. I mean, you wonder, sometimes Karen will say to me, do we really need to spend that amount of money every month for John Kitchens? And do you really need to be going to Oklahoma City 3 or 4 times a year and spending, $1,200 3 or 4 times a year? Yes, because you got to be reminded, and you got to be given direction, and you got to be held accountable. And John does that for us. So you have to have that thought process. Am I getting the return for what I'm pouring in financially as well as time to a coach? And is that coach giving it back to you?
So when you're doing this, you're looking at the one your past sales, everything regarding that. Then at the same time, looking at what the coach has actually done for you. Are you adding that into that all those numbers as well?
Absolutely. That's part of. So what I was going to get to you is, I do a P&L, and I break it out 2 ways for these agents. What are my general administrative expenses, which includes John Kitchens, because that's expense. And then what are my marketing expenses? And we have a criteria we use. No more than 20% of your spend a year should be on marketing. If you're spending more than that, you're not getting the return. Even if you're not going to drill down to the individual things, you can just take that number and say, if I'm spending 30% on marketing, I'm spending too much. So that's one goal. The other goal is to not spend more than 25% on general administrative. Now, in my view, for our agents, when I talk to them about that, I'm talking about what they put in for taxes, what they put in for their 401ks, what they put in for their salaries, what they put in for their savings. So those are all part of that G&A. And, so that's 25%. So the next question is, what is the 45%? The 45% is savings, it's salary, it's your vacation funds, et cetera. So when you add it all up, that comes to 90%. And first thing you're going to ask me, James, is why can't I count to 100? Well, that extra 10% is the safety stock. And that is generally at least 3 months of our business expenses, so that if the wheels fall off, that person's going to have enough to be able to hang in there for a bad month or two and still get back on their feet. And that's a category hardly anybody pays attention to.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
So
Totally.
that's what we do, and it takes time, right? We have one session just to drill down on last year to help them understand where their business came from, what they spent on. That's one whole session. So you don't get to the other end of the rainbow the first time. The second session is plugging it all in and working backwards. You know, James, you want to sell 100 homes this year, and you want to make 2.7% commission on your sales, and whatever that number is. Then this is working backwards how we get there, so that you know when you're done with your year, you're going to say, "Hey, I got there."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, are you breaking down like action steps, like, everything you should be doing per month, everything you should be doing per week, everything you're doing per day in order to hit those goals as well?
Yeah, all the guardrails are there. I mean, you know, you got to look at your numbers. And I tell our agents, if you're on your own, you're a team. You are the team. So if you don't have anybody, now we have these 60 some agents, and a lot of our agents will work with somebody else to create a little accountability group. But weekly review on, you know, what's your active listings, what's your pending sales, what have you closed, what is your percentage of the year so far on that? Are you on target? You know, to keep you on track. And then we do, and not all of them do this, but we do it with about half of those agents. We do a quarterly sort of financial review. Are you on budget with your marketing? Are you on budget with your lead spend? Are you getting the return on that? So, you know, just like anything else, if you don't pay attention to it, it could easily, you know, go off the deep end.
Man, my dad used to always tell me, you pay attention to the pennies and the dollars take care of itself. All right.
Mhm.
So like those paying attention to details make a big difference, especially when you're looking at growing and building a business, because like those little things that you forget about or not even paying attention to, I mean, it ends up being big things over the course of 12 months.
Yep.
So tell me, like, I mean, I know in here, like, I mean, we're talking about business planning, but what about personal planning as well? I mean, are you putting that stuff in there? Like, if you're gonna do something with the family, going somewhere, like
Yes.
trips and things of that nature, is that
Yeah.
all put in as well?
Hey, I'm so glad you asked me that question. Um, there's a, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. It's called the 5 a.m. Club. It's run by Byron Lazine. Byron's in Connecticut. He has the largest real estate team in Connecticut, and he also has one in Naples, Florida. And he started this thing about 5 years ago. And at 5 o'clock, for 7 minutes, somebody in his group or rotation of 7 or 8 agents over the course of a year get on for that 5 minutes and give you a motivation speech or give you some pointer. But we had Byron come down to our last event in Greensboro, and he mapped it out so that the first thing you do is meet with your spouse and put together your personal goals. That's number one. And so we do that. Karen and I actually did that. We went to Carolina Beach back in the first week of November and rented a Airbnb. And from 9 to 3 on Friday and Saturday, we worked on our business plan, and then we had fun. So you got to have fun too in life, right? But
Yeah.
um, the first thing we did was our personal goals, our affirmations, our vision board. Vision boards are really important. Byron was telling the story. The first year he did a vision board with his wife, she said, "This is freaking crazy. Why are we doing this? This is not realistic." And at the end of that year, when she looked at that vision board of what they accomplished versus what they were wanting to do, she's like, "Hey, when are we going to do our vision board for 2023? That was really great." So yeah, it's so important. What's your time commitment to your kids? What's your vacation plans for the year? You know, those are things you have to plug into your plan, because it has a financial impact and it has a personal impact, right?
Yeah. Love it, man. I love it. So we're doing the plan as far as for your personal trips and things of that nature. Um, what are some of the things that you think that most people kind of mess up on, or kind of take for granted when it comes to like planning itself?
Um, well, I think a lot of people talk about what they want to do, but then they don't document it and they don't execute on it. So, for example, last year on our vision board in January, this is Michael and Karen. We decided that Christmas 2022, we were going to take all three of one of our daughter lives in London, but the other two boys and their spouses to London for Christmas for 10 days. And so we put in our budget, that was our vacation fund for 2022. And we went over there and we spent 10 days and we spent a lot of money, but we had a great time and we didn't have to dip into any of our other finances to do it because we planned for it from the beginning of the year. And this year we already have October lined up. We're going to go to Northern Italy as a family, rent a chalet for 10 days, go all over Northern Italy. And we know that we'll have that $15,000 to pay for that trip for airfare and expenses because we're planning for it.
Man, you got to take a lot of pictures of that and send that back, man.
I've never been to Italy. I'm really excited about going there.
I got a friend of mine. He just came back from overseas. He was in Spain, and they spent like 10 days, and he was just telling me how beautiful it was. And I mean, it was the same thing. Like, they planned the trip early. They put things away. And that's one of the things I think as real estate agents, I think sometimes we get bogged down into like selling houses that we forget the reason why we're selling houses, which is to spend more time with family, spend more time
Right.
doing some of the things that you really want to do. I mean, it's great to be successful, but if you're successful with handcuffs and you can't go nowhere and enjoy it, like what's the purpose?
Yeah. Well, there's two things on that plan that I didn't go into any detail on, but if anybody has an interest in getting better at that budgeting and business planning, there's a book called Profit First that is amazing. Great book. And what he talks about in that book, Mike says 10% of what you make up front goes into a profit first savings account. In other words, you don't make your profit at the end of the year to find out how much money you have left. You should be making a profit every transaction and putting that away. So that's part of our administrative expense. We put 10% of every commission into a profit first account that we don't touch. It goes into some savings and loaning. We don't even have anything else there. That just goes there. It's like a secret weapon. And then that 10%, here's my analogy about that last 10%, James. Anybody who's done a renovation that comes in on budget? I never have. Never. We're 0 for 8. We've done 8 renovations in homes we've owned over the years. Never have we come within 5 or 10%. So that 10%, it's just a safety stock.
Yeah. So, all right. So what about somebody that, we got all types of different people that's listening right now, but the person that needs like every dime of that money, like, because one of the things I always tell people, like, like when you're building your business, like you want to run it like a business, but sometimes you can't right away because you got to build that business first. And I always say, like, what the focus should be on becoming that marketer, doing that work, putting in that sweat equity in order to get your business up and going. But what like if somebody had, like, I mean, would you advise them to put the profit up first, or to actually put the marketing budget up first? Like, what are some of the first things that you would start doing in order to get to that consistency when doing some things you're talking about?
Well, I would say someone starting out should plan on 10% marketing at the most, because when I talk about 20%, I'm talking about somebody who's got a business rolling. I would never suggest someone starting out to put more than 10% in to get going. I would definitely still do the 10% profit no matter what, because that's a habit. Whether you are making $5,000 a month or 50, that 10% habit becomes easy once you start to get really good at it. The other thing is there's a lot of things you can do that don't cost money. I'm listening right now to a 4-day thing with Carl Whistle and Brian Kochi out in San Diego. And their whole thing is community, how they've done 100 straight weeks of videos with business people talking about their business, whether it's a restaurant or a grocery store, it doesn't matter. And he can point to a minimum of 25% of his sales coming from referrals from those business owners who said, hey, Kyle Whistle's a great guy. He did an interview with me. He's a great realtor, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't cost anything but time. So that's one thing. Create your own geo farm. That doesn't cost a lot. You're talking about postcards and getting in the community. These are things that new people do. Open houses for other agents and ask them to give you let you have the leads from the open house. That doesn't cost you anything. So these are all things I always recommend to agents getting started, to get their database. Real important. Get your database up and running and start working it as your sphere. And I'm sure you, James, have done enough of this in the past. People don't really understand who their sphere of influence is. They don't realize it's your favorite person at the grocery store or your banker, or they don't think that way. They think of their friends or people that they worked with.
Yeah.
So if you think broader about that, and you can create a pretty significant sphere, it's a good starting point to go after and get business.
Yeah. One of the first things I tell everybody is pick up your phone and every single person in your phone, put it in your database. Like every single person in your phone. First thing is say, well, I don't have any leads. I haven't done any business. Like, you got a phone, right? Like, how many people you got on your phone right now? Oh, I got probably about, 200, 100, 300, whatever the number is. Put in your database. And now you need to let your database know on a monthly basis, you're a real estate agent. You're an expert. Things about this market. Tease that database. For future business. A lot of people, they just don't even realize that these people are agents. Because you're not putting yourself out there. So
Right. Yeah. And someone who's new, and you get new agents, we get new agents too. It's real important that they buddy up with somebody right away, because in your group, you have a really large group. We have a medium-sized group. It's easy to get lost in that group and not feel the community. But if you buddy up with somebody early on that you can have those weekly accountability sessions with, it gives you that sense of belonging, that sense of tracking and measuring, sense of making progress. It may not be dollar sign progress, but it might be habit progress. It might be building your base. So I really encourage anybody who's a solo agent or part of a group, but not really affiliated with anybody directly, get somebody that you know and trust and can depend on, and it'll help you build your business.
Yeah. Man, just kind of going back to what, from the beginning, what we were talking about before, just having the right plan in place as well, especially when you're talking about growing your business and knowing your numbers. But I used to have a coach that used to always ask me, where was your last 10 closings? Where did they come from? Where was your last 20 closings? Where did they come from? And then, just have us to write that thing down. And, you're trying to focus on one particular thing, 9 times out of 10 is probably focusing on where those last closings came from. If you put some more energy or more time around that thing, or some kind of structure around it, you can turn that into, you can, add 20% to that, or 30% or 40% or even more, depending on how far you're willing to go with it.
Yeah. I mean, we part of our weekly call with John Kitchens is I prepare a spreadsheet, and it's live, active all the time. Every time we make a sale, I plug in that sale in that column. Where did it come from? Was it a realtor.com? Was it an open house? Was it a referral? So, and then we make sure we document on that sale the buyer's names or the sellers and the agent that we did the transaction with, because at the end of the transaction, we go back and send them a card with a little Starbucks card to thank them for working with us. And at the end of the year, we send them a Happy New Year card and thank them for working with us. So it's that side of the business is part of your responsibility too, is building your relationship with agents just as much as it is with clients.
Love it. Well, I'm telling you, Michael, man, like I said, I always glad that, when you come on. I mean, you always bring so much knowledge and information, and you're willing to share, man. Just all around good person in and of itself. So once again, we do these every Thursday at 11 o'clock Eastern, where we're interviewing an agent that's killing it. Michael, any parting words before we get out of here, man?
No, I mean, the only thing I'll say is get into a habit. You guys do something every month. We do something every month. just get out there in the community, make yourself present, and it'll come back. And sooner or later, people are going to start running into you, James, in the grocery store, and they're going to say, "Hey, aren't you a real estate agent? I saw you." It doesn't cost anything. Just be present and be out in the community, and don't be bashful. Be brave.
Be active, man. Love it. Hey, before we pop out of here, I mean, you got your events planned out for this year. I know you probably got one coming up, right?
So I am so freaking excited. We have Kyle Whistle
Okay.
coming back to little old Greensboro, North Carolina, to spend two full sessions. In other words, the morning and the afternoon, talking about how to build your business free, just like we were talking about. And then we have Keeping Current Matters coming to talk about the current and the forecasted market that day. And then that evening, we have a band out of Boston coming down that does opening acts for people like Hootie and the Blowfish, et cetera. And they're going to do a 2-hour concert at the end of the day for all of the attendees. So that's going to be our big event in May.
All right, dude. I might have to come up there in May.
Come on up.
What's the date on that?
May 3rd. It'll be May 3rd, Wednesday, May 3rd.
All right. I'm gonna try to make that one, man. And I'm gonna try.
I'll send you an invite.
Yeah, send me an invite for that. I'm gonna try to get up there for that. It sounds like gonna be an awesome event.
All right.
Right. Once again, like I said, we do these every Thursday at 11. If anybody want to know more about how to grow their business, how to double their business, how to get into more of some of the stuff that we're doing and we're talking about here, I mean, you can reach out to me. You can go to jameshmassey.com, just jump on my calendar. You can reach out to Michael, and we're open book and we're always willing to share. Appreciate you again, Michael, and definitely send me that invite, dude. I mean, I think I'm gonna try to make that one.
All right, James. Good to talk to you, brother. Take care.
You too, Mike.
Bye-bye.